Welcome back. So let's work on the App Inventor side of this project now. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change my project bucket. I don't need to change my Firebase token or my URL. Those are set up properly. But I need to go back to Firebase and notice that my quizzes, the quiz names and the quizzes themselves, are in a bucket called MultiQuizFB. So I'm going to go back to App Inventor and rename this MultiQuizFB. I misspelled quizzes there, but we're just going to leave it. So that's one step. The other thing is we're going to add a list picker, and we're going to put it at the very top, and it's going to have the message choose a quiz on it. Okay, and this is where we're going to put the names of the quizzes when we query them from the database. Okay, let's go over to the blocks editor and work on our algorithm now. So we're going to have a two-part algorithm. The first part, we're going to query for the names of the quizzes. Part two, we're going to select a quiz and then query for that specific quiz. So our initial query here isn't going to load in a quiz as it's doing here. It's simply going to load in the question, the names of the quizzes. I'm going to clean this out here. We aren't going to need this global variable to keep track of the number of quizzes, so I'm going to delete that from the app. Our first query is going to be for the quiz names, and going back to Firebase, this corresponds to this tag right here. So it's got to be quiz names, right? As you know, because this is an asynchronous process, we need to respond to the result that Firebase sends us in the got value block. So I'm going to clean out most of this here. So we do need an if else. So I'm going to put an if else in here. And the first thing we're going to check for is the tag quiz names. If we compare text and the tag that we get back from the database is equal to quiz names, then what we want to do is store the names of the quizzes that we got back from the database. So I need a global variable for that. We're going to call it quiz names, and we're going to set it to the empty list because it is a list of names that we're getting back. And the value here stores that list of names. So I'm going to set the quiz name. I want to name this quiz names, not name. And I want to set it to this value. So we've just done is we've stored these two names in that variable. What we also want to do is we want to put those names into our list picker. So I want to set the elements of the list picker to this list of quiz names. Oops, I want to do that in the then clause, not the else clause. There we go. So that's part one. Let's test it now. Okay, as you see, I have the app running on my device. So the initialize block fires, remember, when the app first starts up, so it has by now loaded the quiz names into the list picker. So when I select list picker, I see our quiz names. Of course, if I select a quiz, nothing's going to happen. But that part works. So let's work on part two now. For part two of the algorithm, what we want to do is load a particular quiz, the quiz that the user has selected in the list picker. So we want the list picker after picking event handler. And what we want to do is we want to do another one of these queries. But this time, instead of querying for quiz names, we're going to query for the selection that the user made. And what that selection consists of, if we go back to Firebase, is one of these names. So we're querying for, say, President's Quiz, which of course is the tag for this whole quiz right here. And so if we selected President's Quiz, then all of this data is going to be loaded into the app. So these are the only two queries we're going to make. So if the query is not quiz names, then it must be that we're querying for a specific quiz. So let's process this result from Firebase as if it's a particular quiz. That means we need to populate the question list, the picture list, and the answer list from the data we receive. And the data we receive, remember, is a list of lists stored in this value property. It corresponds to this list of lists. I'm going to set the first variable is the questions list, and I'm going to set it to the first sublist of the data that I got back. So I want to select from the value, that's the list of lists, the very first sublist. That's the list of questions. Going back to Firebase, that's this sublist right here. It's indexed 0 in Firebase, but it's indexed 1 in App Inventor. Then I want to do the same thing for the other two lists. Next is the answer list, and that's at index 2, so I want that. And thirdly, the picture list, and that's at index 3. Once I get those values into the app, then of course I want to start displaying the next question and letting the user do the quiz. All right, I've brought up the app again, and now when I choose a quiz, if I choose the President's Quiz, I see the first question, and I can answer Truman, and that's the answer, and you can see I got it correct. The nice part of this app is I can switch anytime I want to another quiz. So I'm going to switch over to multiplication, and look at that, I got an error message. So let's go and look at this error message. The error message says I'm attempting to get item number 3 of a list of length 2, and it shows me the list, and you can see that it's the list of questions here and answers for the multiplication quiz over that we had in Firebase. So if I go to the multiplication quiz, remember it just has questions and answers. It does not have a list of pictures. So that's a bug that we have to fix. It's pretty easy to fix. The problem is this block here. For some quizzes, and in this case the multiplication quiz, there is no third list. So what we have to do here is use an if-else to test whether or not the length of this list is greater than or equal to 3. If the length of that list is greater than or equal to 3, okay, so I need the list length block. If the length of this list of values is greater than or equal to 3, then I want to do this. So in that case, we're going to take the list of pictures and store it there. Otherwise, what we should do is we should null out the picture list. So in the else block, I'm simply going to set the picture list back to the empty list. This is the second quiz I've loaded. It may already contain the pictures from the previous quiz. Okay, so let's go over and test that now. Okay, I'm back in my app. I'm going to choose the multiplication quiz this time. Oh, I'm still getting an error. This says I am attempting to get item number 2 of a list of length 0. And that's because we forgot to fix the way the quiz is displayed. Let's go over here and look at display next. Notice here that we are always grabbing a picture off the picture list. But of course, this list could be empty. And then in that case, you can't select the item at index 1, 2, or 3 from that list. So we need another if-else over here. And the question in this case is whether or not the list is empty. If the list is empty, is the list empty? And the list is this picture list. In that case, we're just going to set the image to the empty string. That'll null it out. Nothing will appear there. In the else clause, what we're going to do is we're going to set the image to this as we were doing previously. Try again. Choose the multiplication quiz, and there we go. It comes up correctly. If I do 81 as my answer, correct. And then I can go back to the President's Quiz anytime I want. Which president recognized China, and so on. So I think that's a very nice place to stop and let you work on this, and then we have some creative projects for you to work on to enhance this app even further.